Chag almost sameach, everybody. How are you? It's nice to be here. Thank you so much. Tonight we're talking about the incredible festival of Sukkot. It is called HaChag. Okay, and so what we're going to do tonight is I want to go through the basic mitzvot. We're going to see them in the Chumash. So we'll learn the basic mitzvot. Then from the basic mitzvot, we're going to do a quick review of the sukkah and the lulav and etrog, and then there'll be time for questions. But of course, if in the middle I say something which doesn't make any sense, like it's in Polish, so please stop me, and I'm happy to answer. And also, we're recording this class so that people who can't be here will have the benefit of it. And I was going to make a printout, but I realized all I was going to print out were really things that were already in the Chumash. So why waste paper? Let's turn right to the Chumash, okay? So can I have somebody read for me? Any volunteer to read? Okay, chapter 23, verse 42 in Vayikra.
I guess I could read it.
Okay, wonderful.
You shall dwell in booths for a 7-day period. Every native in Israel shall dwell in booths,
Keep going.
so that your generations will know that I caused the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I took them from the land of Egypt. I am Hashem, your God. And Moses declared the appointed festivals of Hashem to the children of Israel.
Excellent. Wonderful. Now, it's funny that our school uses the word booth. So, the Sukkot, can you translate it any other way? What's like old school? Tabernacle, that's right. Tabernacle, that's the old school name.
Yeah.
Booth, is, it seems to be, personally, booth degrades sukkah. Translations are so finicky.
Like a dunking booth?
Yeah, it could be a dunking booth, right? It could be like a booth at the state fair where you're shooting the ducks or something. But you don't dunk somebody at a tabernacle. So we'll have to speak to Rabbi Art Scroll about that one.
Unless there's a mikveh.
But the most important thing is that a sukkah, in Jewish terms, is a temporary structure. A temporary structure. And in that sense, a booth works, because a booth you take up and it moves around, and next day it's in Akron, and the other day it's in Madison, and so forth. It's a temporary place. And people used to build these kind of things not during Sukkot.
Right.
And so question is, why don't we, by the way, when did the Jewish people, when were they freed from Egypt?
Ooh.
What time of year was it?
Nisan?
Spring, right?
Spring, yeah.
I'm pretty sure, right? Isn't that a whole feature of Passover, in case I'm wrong, right?
I think so.
Right? So why don't we build booths in the spring?
Oh.
So the questions discussed by the rabbis. See, lots of people build these kind of shade structures, apparently, back in the old days, in the summer. They wanted to get out of their homes, they were in the fields, and they needed a place to rest out of the shade. Today, you just go to Big Five and buy a pop-up canopy. But back then, you had to build a structure and put stuff on it. So if Jewish people were building sukkahs as the season got hot in the spring, they'd look like everybody else. Instead, what do? We build a sukkah at the wrong time of year, as it were. Wrong time of year. People don't want to go out of their houses in the fall. It's getting cold. It was only 69 today. So as it's getting colder, all of a sudden, we're going out of our homes, we're building a temporary dwelling, and we have to live in it for 7 days. Why would we do that? Because it shows that the whole sukkah has nothing to do with what everybody else is doing. It has to do with our relationship with God and history. That is correct. That's right. That's right.
And also, if we build sukkah in the
Correct.
spring,
That's
so
that.
the goyim also go out from the house.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what do we do in the sukkah? Again, we're going to fly through these things. We're going to get more into detail, but I want to give a 30,000 foot picture. Okay? We eat our meals, we sleep, you relax. Weather permitting, we sleep in the sukkah. Is it permitted to sleep with your spouse in the sukkah? What do you think? Absolutely. No problem. Just you should have your own sukkah.
No, but the Rebbe say,
Sir, I'm so sorry to bother you. It's not a discussion.
no,
We're
but
having
the Rebbe of Chabad say it's
Okay.
not,
sir,
not allowed to sleep in the sukkah.
if your class will be, they'll hold the class for you, but for now, unfortunately, you're going to have to listen to me for the next 30 minutes, at which time you're welcome to ask questions, but we're trying to have a class. It's not a discussion. I appreciate your input, and I do, and I appreciate you being here very much. Thank you. Okay. Now, what happens if it starts raining? So it says in the Gemara, mitztayer pater min sukkah. A person who is uncomfortable does not have to be in the sukkah. That has big ramifications, right? It's not just a person. We don't really have to deal with this problem in LA. Rain.
Right.
When's the last time it rained? Anybody?
Last year.
Right. Well, sure, last year. Long time. Sometimes it rains. Sometimes it rains. So we'll discuss that as well. But if it's too hot, which is a problem, or like when we lived in Warsaw, it's too cold.
Yeah.
So a person can be putter from a sukkah. They can be exempt from having to use the sukkah for eating and dwelling and so forth if it's too hot or cold, or if it's pouring rain. Now, the first night of Sukkot is special. It's a mitzvah doraisa. It is a Torah commandment that you have to have your meal and kiddush in the sukkah. So much so that if it's raining, you have to wait for your meal. You can't start your meal until the rain stops. If past midnight you still haven't started your meal, you know what you do? You still go into the sukkah. You make kiddush and hamotzi in the sukkah, but you don't say leisha b'sukkah because you finish your meal indoors. And if you want to know what you do if it stops raining, you got to go back outside and finish your meal. That's how important the first night of Sukkot is.
First night.
Every other night is going to be a derabanan. In other words, it is a rabbinic enactment. It's beyond the scope of tonight's class to get into why, when, and where, but just you should know how important that first night is, that everybody be in a sukkah and make kiddush and hamotzi. Okay, next, and the most second recognizable thing about Sukkot are the Jewish lightsabers, right? Also called the lulav. So, and again, we'll get into what they mean, but I'm trying to paint a picture. A lulav and etrog. So let's look at this up, okay? Look up chapter 23 and go back a little bit to verse 40. Aaron, would you read?
Sure, when it comes to this.
689.
688.
It was in English.
On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather the crop of the land, you shall celebrate Hashem's festival for a 7-day period. The first day is the rest day, and the 8th day is the rest day.
Good.
You shall
Okay.
take yourselves the first day of the fruit of the citron tree, the branches of the date palms, twigs of a
Plated tree.
plated tree.
Okay,
and
great
brook-
translation. Sorry about this. And brook willows.
and brook willows.
And rejoice before Hashem. Okay, so you read two things. So we almost covered all the mitzvahs of Sukkot. Take for yourselves. By the way, if you were to read this, the only thing that makes any sense really is the date palm. Citron, nobody eats citrons. But we know, what's the citron? Does it say citron? Let's look at the Hebrew. Look at verse 40. Mem. Lekachtem lachem b'yom rishon pri citron? Does it say pri citron?
It's 8 Hadar.
What? Eitz Hadar?
It's
What's that? What's Eitz Hadar? What does that mean?
The tree that goes to Dars.
Wait, what in the back?
It's a beautiful.
Beautiful tree.
it's Hadar.
We only know that we're supposed to take an etrog because of the oral tradition. If we were to rely specifically on the written tradition, I happen to love, grapefruit trees.
Yeah,
Why can't I take a grapefruit? It's a beautiful tree.
that's
right?
true.
So we are so dependent on so many things for Sukkot, on the oral tradition, which is in the Mishnah, and then explained in the Torah, and then in the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch and so forth, because we wouldn't know what to bring. Eitz Hadar. That's not, it doesn't say citron. Yeah? Question. I see a question on your face, Rob.
Where's the word etrog come from then?
Oh,
From the-
that's a whole nother.
Rabbanan?
That's already rabbinic era, right? And we right, but we know it's an etrog. Okay. Next, kapos tamarim. Okay, date palm. Anaf eitz avos. Again, it's a tough one. Plaited tree, but we know from our Masorah that is a myrtle. Okay, today's myrtle. The arve nachal. That's a willow. But again, it really doesn't tell us much more. But here's what we do. And thankfully, there are handy guides and YouTube videos for you to do this. It's very important for you to if you can acquire your own set. Once upon a time, every town would be happy to have their own set. And they'd use it for their own set. And sometimes they would have to wait more than 1 year to get a new lulav. And there's a whole discussion in Shulchan Aruch how dry the lulav can be before you can still use it.
Wow.
Here in LA, just go to your neighbor. Can you take your neighbor's lulav? No, sorry, you can't. The Talmud's very clear. Lulav aguzzle. We do not want to have a stolen lulav. So some people, they want to cut a lulav themselves, make sure you own it or have permission from the owner. Better yet, just buy one from Mickey down the road. Okay? So you buy your lulav and your etrog, and there are videos about how to wave it and so forth, and everything that is sold by the reputable places is kosher to use. There are different levels. This year, this is a little more technical. This year, the first day of Sukkot is on a Thursday. So therefore, we use the lulav and the etrog. Do we use the lulav and etrog on Shabbat? We don't use it. Just like we don't use a shofar on Shabbat. Okay? So, was it this past year? I think it was last year. Did it start on the Shabbat? I think it did, yeah. The first night of Sukkot was on a Shabbat. So therefore, the first day was on Shabbat. So that meant that the first day we took lulav last year, and we call it taking lulav, by the way. The first day we took lulav last year was only, at best, durabanan, which meant that certain factors about what made the species kosher had a reduced level, because we only did it on the second day. This year, we got to go all in on Sukkot. We have to go all in. What do I mean? We should buy a nice etrog and a nice lulav, and the whole set should be nice. Doesn't mean you have to spend $100, but you should spend a nice amount of money if you can afford it. Now, we'll get to this issue. Is everybody required to shake it? So, lulav and the sukkah are time-bound commandments, which means that men are obliged to do it. They do not have a choice. And women are voluntarily obliged. If they want to do it, they may do it, of course. But a man has to do it. Even if you don't own your own lulav and etrog, you have to waive it. What do? You borrow from somebody. You say, can I acquire this temporarily to use it? And you say, Darren, oh, you're such a nice guy. Thank you so much.
What about within a family?
Within a family, it's complicated when everybody starts being past bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, because in theory you all live together and so forth, and so could you buy one for everybody? You can buy one for a whole family. Just it should be known that the person is acquiring it for themselves when they use it, and then they're giving it up when they put it down. Yes.
Can you do it for someone else who can't shake it themselves?
No, it's a great question. There are mitzvahs that we can do through somebody else, right? Like the greatest example is Torah study. I'm so busy, I can't afford, but I can hire a guy to study Torah for me, right? Again, it sounds crazy, but we know that that's legit. Another one might be Kiddush, Bris Milah, right? I didn't do my son's bris, right? I appointed, thank you, Doc. I appointed the moil, and he did it, thank God. Everything turned out okay. No any slip-ups. So lulav, though, you can't appoint somebody. It's only you can do the mitzvah yourself, just like sukkah. I can't hire a guy to sit in the sukkah for me. Doesn't work. You have to do it yourself. Now, we also, any other questions? Again, quick questions on etrog and lulav. Yes?
Can it be a community etrog and lulav, like your
Absolutely.
like the shul?
A whole town can have one. And back in Poland, where my grandparents are from, I'm sure that if they had one set, everyone was super psyched.
Right.
Okay? Stavis, there were like 500 people in the town. Poor people. And there'd be one set, be in the shul. You'd go, everyone would take turns shaking it, making the bracha. And when you said Hallel and so forth, you did not have a set in your hand. And that was totally fine. Because the mitzvah is to wave it. Everything else we do with the lulav and etrog, carrying it during Hallel, walking around with the Hoshanas around the bima, carrying it, all that is just like, cherry on top. We live in such a wealthy age, thank God, And by the way, when I said Jewish lightsaber, was I making a joke or was I pointing to something truthful? It's a deep idea. It is said that the lulav is kind of like a spiritual weapon. It is a spiritual weapon. And when we point it in different directions, it's part of pushing away the negative forces, the klipa around us. So it's a kind of a joke, but it's not. It actually has a little truth to it. And if you want to get really into it, the etrog does look like a hand grenade. but it does. I don't know of any similar relation to it having any power. So sukkah, the etrog, and what else do or don't we do? Let's look at the other mitzvot. We just read, as you saw there on line 39. But on the 15th day, when you gather the crop of the land, okay, you celebrate Hashem's festival for a 7-day period. The first day is a rest day, the 8th day is a rest day. So here the Torah outlines the parameters of the festival in Israel. We have 7 days. The first day is a holy day. In other words, you can't do any work. The last day is a holy day, you can't do any work. What is the last day of Sukkot called? Hoshana Rabbah. Hoshana Rabbah is the last day of Sukkot. Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah is their own festival. It's its own festival, stands alone.
Is it kind of connected? It feels connected.
It's very connected. The Midrash explains the connection between Sukkot and the last days like this. A king was coronated, says the Midrash. And he was so excited he invited the entire world under his control, which was many, many nations. Kings in those days, they weren't ethno-states, right? They were multi-ethnic. By the way, Israel's also multi-ethnic. It's a multi-ethnic empire. Everyone's invited to my coronation party and it lasts for 7 days. But after that, you know what? I really want to celebrate with my closest people and friends. So the last day, the king says, on the 8th day of the festivities, I just want my closest people. And the Midrash says that's an explanation of Sukkot. Because Sukkot, in a way, in the day, was a celebration for the world. The 70 bulls which are offered up on Sukkot as offerings represent the 70 proto-nations of the world. And Shmini Atzeret, we only have one bull. And that represents the Jewish people. So, the Hallel prayer is recited all the days of Sukkot, every single day. It's an important prayer. Even if you can't get to synagogue, you can still say Hallel. Okay? It's a beautiful, important prayer to say. And even if you don't have your lulav and etrog, as I mentioned, you can still say Hallel. If you walk into synagogue, which I hope you will, on Sukkot, you walk in a little late, like me, and they're in the middle of Hallel. The halacha is you join Hallel. You don't say any of the other prayers that you might have missed. You do those after. Hallel is so important that you just say Hallel with everybody and then go back. That's assuming you said your Birkas HaTorah, the blessings of the Torah, which we'll talk about in one of my future upcoming classes. Okay. Now the last day of Sukkot is called Hoshana Rabbah. I don't know who said it there, but which means the great Hoshana. What's a Hoshana? Anybody know what a Hoshana is?
Like thanks or something?
So Hoshana is, back in temple days, they used to chop down these huge willow branches. And this was the culmination of the Sukkot festivities. And they'd march them around the Mizbeach 7 times. And they would pour water. They'd have water libations. And all of this was to really to evoke, to hopefully from Hashem, that there should be good rain in the right time, to show our gratitude to Hashem for all the things that Hashem does for us and so forth. So Hoshana Rabbah, the great Hoshana, was when we had the biggest bows and we did the most circumferences and it was the biggest party. So here today in LA, we'll walk around the Bima 7 times on Hoshana Rabbah, and it's very beautiful. If you ever have not been to the Happy Minyan on Hoshana Rabbah, it's the place to be. And after circling, we put down our lulav and etrog. That's the end of it, after 7 days of carrying them. And we take 5 aravos, stems of willows, similar to the ones that are in the lulav, and we bang them on the ground.
Excuse me, I'm not sure that's still recording.
Battery?
Low battery.
Low battery. Oh, just click the, it's okay. Click it. Okay. You keep going?
Close.